Hello everyone, welcome to a new series in which I will be discussing real-world things. As a result of this, I want to put out a brief trigger warning. I may start talking about something you find personally upsetting. If this happens, I apologize, it is not my intention to do so, it just happens to be, in my opinion, connected to something that I've got on my mind in particular that I just want to talk about. So, with that being said, I want to also mention that this isn't as unusual as it may seem because I used to create content like this on TikTok, but that's obviously very inconvenient for not only me to upload, but also for you to listen to, because a lot of these videos I would have to break up into multiple parts, and of course that creates a whole problem of, you finding a part on your For You page and then having to go and find the rest of it on my profile. It's just a pain in the neck. So, I am switching over to this sort of content to YouTube. And today, very specifically, I want to talk about reputation, and I want to first sort of set up an interesting example in the form of Nadia. Now, if you aren't aware, Nadia is a Call of Duty Twitch streamer who, for most of her career, if not all of her career, has had allegations of using hacks to make her gameplay look better than it actually is. Basically, she's being accused of cheating by using such things as, say, aimbot or whatever. Right? These accusations have been kicking around for the majority of her career. Now, the circumstantial evidence that has been provided makes this a possibility, but I don't know for sure whether or not she is cheating personally. It's just a possibility, a realistic possibility, right? Based on evidence people have provided. And up until now, I would say, or up until recently, I should be more specifically saying, she has been very intelligent and using this sort of controversy surrounding her regarding the possibility of her cheating. She's been using this very effectively to increase her visibility in an otherwise very saturated part of Twitch, which would be Call of Duty streaming. There are a lot of people streaming Call of Duty, and because of these cheating allegations and her very effective up until now responses to these, she has been able to attract a larger audience in a shorter amount of time than one would normally expect. Now, I bring this up very specifically because relatively recently, actually, I think it was a few days ago from the date of this release, she doxed a viewer who was accusing her of cheating, which seems like a very strong response for two reasons. First off, as I said before, and as I made it the specific point of saying, she has up until now been very, very cunning in her use of these allegations to her advantage. But now she's doxed someone who accused her 4 times of being cheating. Essentially, according to her apology video, which lasted less than 5 minutes, so I use the word apology here loosely, she said that this person had stated 4 times in a row that she was a cheater, and so she doxed him. And she didn't just dox him, she spelled his name, his real name, because this person used PayPal, which gives out the real name of the person doing the transaction. So she spelled out the person's real name, and as a very direct result of that, effectively doxed him, because once you have someone's real full name properly spelled and everything, finding where they live is pretty easy. And the concern here is that a potentially particularly fanatical viewer might take things a little too far. It's not exactly an unheard of situation. So, yes, she doxed this person. And my question sort of is why a lot of people have been focusing on the fact that this is obviously wrong, and obviously it is, But no one's really asking why the sudden shift in tone to the cheating accusations, because, again, they've been following her around for quite some time. But this is a very drastic response, and even if she hadn't been responding so well to them before, we still have the response of doxing him to be drastically different from what a lot of people would normally do, which would be either temporarily or even permanently ban this individual, right? That the response of straight out doxing the individual is quite the impressively different response than what would be normal in that given scenario. So, what changed? Well, I think we are coming across the point at which the cheating allegations are no longer pulling in the audience that they once were. In other words, she has milked that dry, so to speak, in terms of the ability to use that to increase her viewership. So I suspect, in my personal opinion, based on how the whole thing went down, that she has now realized that this is a turning point in her streaming career and she needs to kick these cheating allegations in order to become the fixture in the Call of Duty streaming sphere that she would like to be. Now, why do I say that she wants to and could be a fixture in the streaming space? Well, for a couple of very specific reasons. First off, it is a known fact that as time has been going on, more and more women have been playing Call of Duty, which I think is a great thing. However, playing Call of Duty as a woman still is quite a markedly different experience than playing Call of Duty as a guy. So for a lot of these women who are getting into the space, they're going to want a high skill woman that they can watch and maybe learn something about the game or improve their own gameplay by watching. And this is actually an angle that Nadia has been to some extent promoting. She has been promoting her skill level, right? That is part of her brand, is her skill. Now, she hasn't specifically stated that she wants to, at least not as far as I've heard. Let me rephrase that. As far as I've heard, she has not specified that she wants to be sort of the go-to Call of Duty woman gamer, but possibly she does. And if she does, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that as long as she isn't cheating. But back to the primary point. If she can kick these cheating allegations and establish herself as this high-skill woman in the space, then this growing female audience for Call of Duty then has her to go to as, like I said, that high-skill female streamer of Call of Duty. So that is where I suspect she's trying to get. And as long as these cheating allegations continue to exist, then her position in that particular aspect is going to be fairly tenuous. Because if she cannot kick the cheating allegations, then any other woman who comes into the space and demonstrates a high level of skill or higher level of skill than Nadia and isn't being pursued by cheating allegations is going to supersede her and will become that fixture. And while that's not going to necessarily, say, end Nadia's streaming career, it will definitely have a significant impact on her ability to pull viewership, right? Because the go-to streamer will be this other high-skill woman in the space. So, again, this assumes, for the sake of argument, that she cannot kick the cheating allegations, regardless of whether or not she is cheating. If she cannot kick these allegations, then that's going to be the best case scenario. Now, if she is cheating and these allegations continue, at some point, someone's going to find evidence of this and she will be banned from Call of Duty. But worse, she will lose her reputation in the online community. Now, she's already somewhat well, I can't really attest. I'm going to leave that one alone because I can't necessarily fully attest to her reception in the online Call of Duty sphere because I don't know how other creators feel about her behind the scenes. I don't create Call of Duty content. While I have played it and I have been in the community for a little while, I'm not in the content creator part of that community, so I'm not going to sit here and attest to how she's being received in that sphere because I don't know. I just know how she's perceived in the general community. But I will say that should it turn out that she is cheating, which, if these allegations persist, is more likely to be discovered, then she will not only likely be banned from Call of Duty, as most other cheaters tend to be, but she will also be untrusted by the online community, and she will not be able to create a career in literally any other competitive game. And that would then force her to switch over to single player games as the focus of her streaming content. And if she hasn't got an entertaining enough personality to do that, and I can't attest to that, I haven't watched her enough outside of this research to draw a conclusion on that. Maybe some people find her entertaining, maybe some just watch her for the skill, and maybe some watch her for different reasons entirely. I don't know. But if she doesn't have the kind of personality that people are willing to watch play single player games, then that's going to be a very limited audience of only those people that generally do find her interesting to watch, which, again, is going to exist. Her only other option, if she is cheating, would be to essentially create an entirely new channel and identity and start over from scratch as long as nobody discovered that she was Nadia, right? So these are really her two options if she is cheating. And I want to bring this up very specifically because she actually isn't even the main focus. She's just a very interesting example and the most recent example that I can come up with on the subject of very specifically reputation and how carefully you have to create a reputation in the online space, because there is this general and also false idea that any publicity is good publicity, right? There is no such thing as bad publicity, but that's not really the case, especially in online spaces. I'm going to draw another example here of the prank channels, right? Way back in the day, prank channels were the really big thing, and they did quite a number of relatively dubious things in order to gain attention, popularity, and viewership. Well, turns out that, you know, most, if not all, of these pranks were faked. Now, once this came out, the audience's trust in these prank channels completely died. And the very interesting thing is that these creators who had prank channels had lost the trust of their audience by so much that even when they tried to pivot into a different area of content creation, they still couldn't bring in an audience because nobody trusted them anymore. And any space that they tried to enter had already been filled by people who were more trustworthy than the former prank channels. So all of these former prank channels, with maybe one or two exceptions that I might not know of, they all died. All these channels died out, and these people had to move on to something else, right? So that's another sort of historic glaring example of what happens when reputation is gone. But then you have the very interesting aspect and the interesting long-term ramifications of, say, the Paul brothers. Now, the Paul brothers were relatively infamous for quite some time for doing really unpleasant, I wouldn't say really unpleasant, but doing a lot of sketchy things in order to attract the attention of an audience, namely children, which was also the interesting market of prank channels, incidentally. But the Paul brothers did a lot of suspect things to pull in a audience that way. And of course, while some of this was prank content like the other prank channels, a lot of this was a variety of controversial topics. I mean, they hit the headlines several times for a reason. However, over time, their audience grew up and stopped trusting them because obviously anyone with awareness, anyone with maturity obviously saw through what was going on here and the angle that they were going for. And as a result, when their audience matured, they kind of fell away. So what the Paul brothers then realized is that their audience was going to cap basically at a cycle of children, and their audience wasn't going to grow, it was going to remain relatively static. It would just be a cycle of, as children matured and left, newer children would come in, and order to actually theoretically grow their audience, they had to sort of rebrand. And so they did. They rebranded, they got away from the content that made them so controversial in the first place, and they went off to do such things as boxing, and they went into podcasting, and they began rebuilding their reputation, which worked for a while until they got into cryptocurrency projects. Now, CoffeeZilla goes into these a lot better than I ever will, quite frankly. I'm not going to sit here and talk about the suspect nature of these. However, the end result of these, essentially, is that a lot of their new fan base that trusted that they had turned over a new leaf suddenly found themselves having trusted the wrong people and losing a lot of money. And CoffeeZilla's conversation on CryptoZoo, as a very specific example, really shows how betrayed a portion of their audience absolutely is, right? And so what they're essentially doing is ruining their reputations all over again. And it's not going to be terribly long before they will really only be able to pull in an audience for boxing, and even then, I don't think their audience is going to be that large. Not that they're bad boxers or anything like that, but boxing as a sport itself is still a limited audience because not everyone's particularly interested in boxing, and it doesn't have a sort of universal appeal like, well, there's nothing with universal appeal, honestly, but they won't really be trusted online anymore due to their long history of what I'll just broadly call shenanigans. And they're going to lose their ability to pull in a serious long-term online audience. So even though they did utilize suspect a suspect reputation for growing their audience, at some point that audience is going to effectively level out, again, due to the cycle of children maturing and leaving and new children who don't know any better coming into their audience, and then rinse and repeating this process. That's going to cap your audience. And so they had to rebrand, and they did, but then the lure of money once again called, and they are damaging their reputation again for, again, suspect crypto projects. Again, if you want more details on these, I recommend CoffeeZilla. Absolute legend in terms of covering suspicious financial things, particularly in the crypto space. But, these are just kind of three examples of how important it is for online content creators to craft a very specific reputation, to not really go around and do things that would cause you to have a negative reputation. Look at Markiplier. He's got an excellent reputation. He's not done anything, as far as I've ever heard, anything even remotely weird or suspicious, and he has not ever betrayed the trust of his audience. I've been watching Markiplier for quite a long time because of this, and so have a lot of other people, right? Markiplier never went out of his way to do anything controversial for the sake of publicity or anything like that. So he's been very careful with his reputation and how he's grown his channel. Did it take him a little longer to grow his channel than other people? Absolutely. But unlike people who utilized shady actions to grow their channel via controversy, Markiplier never did that, and so has become a permanent fixture in the YouTube space. He is one of the most successful YouTubers kicking around, right? And he's accomplished this by progressing in a very honest way. So Markiplier stands out as a shining example of, very specifically, the kind of longevity you can reach should you actually craft a reliable reputation. Now, to go really quickly back to Nadia as sort of a bookend, again, she has used the controversy surrounding whether or not she's cheating very effectively. However, she has backed herself into this weird corner where she now has to buck these allegations, and if she cannot, she's going to have a equally tenuous position in the Call of Duty streaming space, right? And I want to be very clear that, once again, I don't know if she's cheating or not. If she is, that is eventually going to be uncovered. If she isn't, then she needs to definitively disprove these allegations, something she has not, in my opinion, done. So it is going to be very interesting to watch Nadia move from here, especially given her new controversy of doxing this viewer, which is going to be a permanent mark on her reputation. And it will be interesting to see where she goes from a career perspective from here. So I just kind of wanted to talk about this because I keep seeing this concept of, well, you know, all publicity is good publicity. That is not true. If you create or you grow off of a negative reputation, you are going to lose your channel, absolutely, or lose your online credibility, which is basically the same thing. To kind of end off, I have two other examples. Ricegum, who decimated his reputation with his own audience and now does not have anywhere near the same viewership and never will, quite frankly. J-Station was another excellent example of someone who absolutely tanked his reputation in favor of viewership, and once sort of the real J-Station was revealed, which was revealed ages ago, but, you know, no one was sorry to see him go, right? Essentially. So, yes, how you craft your online reputation is very important, even if the consensus is, nah, you know, any publicity is good publicity. Look at all these viewers I'm getting. Nah, those viewers are temporary because of the way you acquired your reputation. So, sort of as a ending warning, if you either are just freshly into content creation or you are thinking about getting into content creation, be very careful with how you become noticed, because if you do so via sketchy activities, then your audience is temporary. It is simply a matter of when the ball drops, so to speak. So, with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, especially suggestions, I love suggestions, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.